Everyone, and welcome to another episode on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. Tonight, we'll be covering a sort of transfer-related show where we've been hearing some strong reports regarding Jeremie Frimpong, as rumors are suggesting that he is Liverpool's number one target to replace Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back. Now, a lot of question marks in regards to Frimpong. Is he able to adapt to that role? We'll discuss that during the show. But before we get into it, please, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now, in terms of Frimpong, I'll be brutally honest with you. In terms of the whole package, in terms of what's been presented on the table, I think it's a great deal for Liverpool. You've got a player who has a release clause of 30 million euros. So in pounds, I believe that's roughly 30 million pounds. And in this day and age, that is an absolute steal. Peanuts. Um, if, if you look at the market, especially the right back market, it's not the sort of market that we're currently blessed with in terms of having a lot of emerging sort of talent. There are a few players out there that I think will automatically be linked with Liverpool, the likes of Van der Sar, who apparently we made an inquiry for, and Gaviro Reed, who plays for Feyenoord, but he's still very young at this stage of his career. But Frimpong, for me, ticks a lot of boxes. Now, also with that release clause, from what I've heard, it's a deal where Bayer Leverkusen do not need the whole sum amount upfront. Sorry, it's where the amount can be, paid in installments, which is something FSG would love to do. That's the way they operate their business. So that's a plus in terms of financial side. But let's put that to one side because that's not something we should really focus on too much. I think with Liverpool fans we become accountants over the years where we view the numbers a bit too much than the ordinary fans. So we'll put that to one side now. Now, in terms of football terms, let's weigh the pros and cons. Now, in terms of the pros, he's an unbelievable player. Now, in terms of what he brings to the table, he's electric on that right-hand side. I've seen him play for Netherlands and for Leverkusen. And when he's going on that right-hand side, he's unstoppable. So that's going to be a plus point for us because if you look at our fullbacks, especially in recent years, we don't really have that profile in our squad. Trent Alexander-Arnold, as amazing he is on the ball, he's not known for his electric pace. He's not going to take on a fullback or any player on that byline. He's going to control the ball and try and pick out the perfect pass. That's his game. He's a technical player. He's not going to use his pace because unfortunately, he's got a decent, level of pace, but he doesn't have that electric sort of burst of speed to get past 2, 3 players. Frimpong does. He can literally do everything on his own on that right hand side. That's how much, you know, of a powerhouse he is on that right hand side. And because he covers that whole flank, it allows the right winger, who of course in our team is Mohamed Salah, to play a bit more centrally, to cut in a bit more, play as a more of an inside forward. He does that tactically for us anyway, but this season we've seen him, you know, do both roles where he's out wide trying to be a creator, or you do see him a bit more infield, depending on the opposition and depending on how Arne Slot has tactically set the team up. With Trent, you've got a player who inverts a little bit more in comparison to Conor Bradley, who is a bit more of a traditional right back, likes to attack that flank. So that allows Mohamed Salah to go a bit central. With Frimpong, Salah does not have to track back. He doesn't even need to occupy that byline because Frimpong will have that under his control. So that's something, which is a very exciting prospect. There's not a lot of teams in world football that have that sort of fullback profile. The only team that I can kind of compare it to is probably PSG, where they've got Nuno Mendes on the left hand side, and then they've got Hakimi on that right hand side. But in terms of dribbling and pace, Frimpong is above Hakimi in that department. And that might be the way Liverpool are trying to set up for the future, with strong links to Kerkez as well. We might have, two fullbacks bombing down. Of course, it won't be happening all the time with both fullbacks, attack at the same time. It'll be a bit of making shift where if the left back goes forward, then Frimpong would drop in, and vice versa. So kind of like your centre midfield pairing if you in the double pivot, where one attacks, one drops deep. Kind of the same in that scenario as well. So that allows Salah to do less running and be a bit more effective in front of goal or within that hot zone, as Arne Slot likes to reference, because I think that's going to be key in terms of how we set up. And also, if Frimpong is signed, it gives me the indication that we're going to go for a traditional number 9. It's not going to be a false 9 or any of that type of profile of a striker. It's going to be an out and out number 9 who's going to benefit from having a player like Frimpong who's going to attack that byline, whipping crosses from different angles, or even if he charges all the way to the end and cuts back a pass. You've got your number 9, your fox in the box to tap those chances into the back of the net. So that's something that's going to be a different way of how we play, and we've not really had that, especially on that right hand side, for a long, long time. So for me, that's a pro. Of course, in terms of the financial sense, the fee that is reported is £30 million, peanuts. He's homegrown because he came through the Man City academy, so that's a plus point. We've lost Trent, who's a homegrown player, so we replaced him with another homegrown player. In terms of how they both play, they're not similar, of course. Trent being more of a technician, but Frimpong gives you something different on that right hand side, gives you that pace, and his creativity. It might not be exquisite in terms of technique, but he gets the numbers. This season alone, he's got 12 assists to his name, so he's a player that will definitely get the GA because he scores a lot of goals or scores a lot more than Trent does. So he's a player that would definitely help us and chip in with the goals in a different area, because we don't want to heavily rely on Mohamed Salah or another attacker if they come through the door. So that's very important in terms of how the team sets up. Now, in terms of cons about signing the player, in terms of his stature, that could be a concern. Some people may, assume that he's lightweight due to his physique and his height. I, I think that's a very lazy assessment. Whenever I've seen him play, if he is, pushed off the ball, it's normally given as a foul because they've done it in a very aggressive manner. He's generally quite strong on and off the ball, and it's not like hasn't he's not played English football before. He came through the ranks at Man City. He's played in the Scottish League, which it can be physical as well, and he's played at Bayer Leverkusen, who play a good level of football there as well. So the physicality element, I don't think is a huge concern. The only concern would be him possibly playing as, on paper, a traditional right back in a back four. If you look at his career at Man City, he played as a right back. Then he moved over to Celtic. He started there as a right back, but because of the way how Celtic played, they were a very dominant team in the Scottish League. They still are, to be fair. And his role ended up transitioning to more of a wing back slash winger. So I can see that being the case at Liverpool as well, where I guess on paper his starting role is right back, but the way we play, it's not going to be exactly how you expect a right back to be. It's going to be where, from a defensive position, it will be right back, but when it transitions to an attack, he's going to be a bit more further up, and he's going to be down that byline, and you're going to see Mohamed Salah shifting inside as well. So playing kind of alongside the striker. So I think that would be a different sort of attack that will be presented from Liverpool's behalf, and I think it's a mouthful in prospect, if I'm being brutally honest with you. Now, in terms of his stats this season, I mentioned earlier on that he has 12 assists to his name. He's played 47 times this season, 4 goals, 12 assists. In terms of how many times, he's only played 4 times as a right back, right mid 41 times, attacking mid once, and even a second striker once as well. Right mid because they play a 3-4-3 formation pretty much. So different systems for different teams. But under Arne Slot, I feel like you've got a player there who I'm sure they've done their research. I'm sure they've done their scouting and know what he can bring to the table. From an attacking point of view, it's a no-brainer to have a player of his level in our team because I think for 30 million, you're not going to get a player like that in world football. You probably have to pay double, if he plays for another team or he plays a bit more in a high profile. So I feel like this is the perfect time to sign Frimpong. He's 24 years of age, so great age to bring him on board. And I feel like with Frimpong, he'll bring something different to our team. Dutch connection as well. Playing for the Netherlands, he's got Van Dijk, Gravenberch, Cody Gakpo, so familiar faces there. So it shouldn't be hard for him to get used to, in terms of how we play. And also one thing as well that I feel like fans can be overly critical about his defending. We've not seen him play as a right back, for a long period of time. I know over here it shows that he's played there 4 times. So for us, I have enough faith with our coaching staff and our scouts and all that stuff to assess the player and know if he's going to be suited to play in our system because I in terms of defending, if you have to do a comparison, it's probably about the same level as Trent. But Trent has improved his defending this year under Arne Slot, and that's come from coaching. So why can't that be implemented for Jeremie Frimpong? In terms of what he brings from an attacking point of view, he's got everything in his locker. Defensively, every player's got weakness. There's not a single player in world football that doesn't have a weakness. So if that's an area that they can work on to help him improve in one-on-one duels and from a positional sense as well, that can be coached. That's not something you need to be blessed with because as you play football, as you develop in a team, you learn how to set up defensively. So it's different sort of models for different teams. So that's something that you're taught. Doesn't matter how good you are, you're pretty much explained in terms of what is the best for you in terms of how you position yourself for a team. So whether it's from a set piece or whether it's from defensive point of view or in transitions, what positions to take up. So if Trent, who we probably regard as an average defender over the years, some have said a lot worse, some have said he's a League Two defender. Why can't we focus on his sort of areas of his game to, excel this season? So I have enough faith in our coaching staff to work on Frimpong into the one-on-one duels and just increase the level and hopefully be more of an all-rounder and not have too many weaknesses. So naturally, you're going to have teams that will attack that side, maybe on the left side if you sign Kirkes, because they are attack-minded fullback. And with all the recent links with other right backs this season so far, they've all been attacking fullbacks. Now, a lot of us fans were probably like, "Do you know what? Trent is going, let's sign a defensive right back. Let's go for that kind of model now." But we've not been linked with a defensive right back. The only defensive right back that played at the highest level for me is probably Kunde from Barcelona, and he's not leaving anytime soon. So that's not the profile that the club are looking for. So they've always had an attacking fullback in mind. So that goes with Frimpong, Van der Sen, Wesley, just to name a few that have been linked with us this week. So that's clearly the idea. That's clearly the vision that Arne Slot wants. He wants an attacking fullback. Looks like he wants it on both sides as well. So for me, we will always say, "Oh, we have concerns about Frimpong's, defensive ability." But end of the day, um, we haven't seen him play right back, really, have we? So if we haven't seen him, how can we make strong sort of judgment that he's terrible at defending? He's been playing as a right midfielder. So based on that, that's the only assessment you can make in terms of his defensive duties. None of us can say, "Oh, we watched him at Man City when he was a traditional right back." because at Celtic he advanced into more of a wing back slash winger. So I feel like we need to stop focusing on the negatives too much. And I feel like we need to look at the positive because that's what we've done with Trent. Let's not be hypocritical. We've always put the defending to one side, but we've also said at the same time, what he brings to the table is unique. He's a amazing passer of the ball. So when you've said things like that, you've got to have the same energy for the next person in line, and that looks like it could be Frimpong. So for me, I feel like I'm excited about this signing. To be fair, I have said in the past that I have concerns, but that's because I've not seen him play right back, and I can't say a lot of us have either. So last 2 3 years he's played predominantly as a wing back slash winger. So it's going to be an interesting summer in terms of do we sign Frimpong? What is put out there in the media and what certain journalists are saying. It looks like he's our number one target, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being our first signing because there's a lot of noise. It's an easier deal to conclude because Bayer Leverkusen have already confirmed that Xabi Alonso is leaving the club, and it looks like he's also joining Real Madrid. Annoyingly, everyone seems to be going there. So with a release clause that's going to be active, we can definitely go in there and negotiate a installment package and pay that £30 million because that's such a low sum of money to sign a player of Frimpong's quality. And he's experienced now. He's played at Leverkusen for a few years now, played at Celtics, won titles there. So he's gonna bring that different energy. I've seen clips of him with the Netherlands. I think there was one clip where he was speaking in Scouse as well, which was quite funny. So he seems a bit of a character, like a good, positive person to have in the squad and in the dressing room. So that's always a good sign. And because he's already familiar with certain players in the team, it should be an easy sort of transition for him to gel with his teammates as well. So I'm very, very positive about this signing now. Not to, be a bit of a downer, but let's say, for example, it doesn't work out where h- him playing at right back doesn't quite work for us, or it works in certain games, but not every game. What do we do? Well, the beauty about Frimpong is that he can play right back, right wing back, and he can play right wing. So he covers three areas. He covers that whole side of the pitch. So depending how he tactically wants to set up, that's a positive for me. That's not even a worst case scenario. If the worst case scenario is if it doesn't work at right back, he can just be a backup for Salah because there are games where we need pace on that flank. And I feel like the last few months where the team has looked a bit jaded and not as energetic, we haven't really attacked the opponent's fullbacks. And that's something I want us to do a bit more. Especially if you look at the way how Feyenoord used to set up under Arne Slot. His wingers were out and out wingers. They would go crazy on the fullback. So that's what I expect us to see again in some shape or form, whether it's from your fullback or from the winger. I want us to be attacking a byline. That's the way you're going to create space in the middle of the box. That's how you're going to see the likes of Szoboszlai and Salah finding pockets and finding themselves in good goal scoring positions. Because when you've got a right back in Trent who's only up to the halfway line, I'm pinging in long balls to a striker that doesn't really hold up the ball. You know, the move is broken down. So you've got to play to people's strengths. So that's why if you sign a player like Frimpong, it will aid and help the new number 9. It will aid and help the right winger, which of course is Mohamed Salah. So for me, I feel like it ticks a lot of boxes. Of course, there will be some concerns about his, one-on-one defending, but I feel like that can be coached. I feel like that can be improved as time goes on. So for me, worst case scenario, if it doesn't work, we've got Conor Bradley. A lot of fans, are saying he's already first choice. In my eyes, if Frimpong wants to join, Frimpong is number one and Conor Bradley is backup. But when I say backup, that doesn't mean he's on the fringes. That basically means they will rotate. So depending on fitness, form, and opposition, that's how Arne Slot will select. But if you're going off by on paper, for me, Frimpong is a better player, and I think he brings more to the table. Conor Bradley's energetic, defending. He's good. He's not great. He's not. He's just probably a little bit better than Trent and probably a little bit better than Frimpong. But there's still areas in his game that he needs to improve, especially in one-on-one duels, because there's been a number of times where he's been cooked and it doesn't look good for us. So I think with Conor Bradley, you've got a player that's still learning, and we won't be highly dependent on him because he has picked up a few niggles this season, and that's a concern. He's quite young, he's 21, and he's picking up recurring injuries. So if you've got a player where you can rotate with Frimpong, then you can manage their games a bit better as well. So for me, having Frimpong and Bradley as your two right back options is fantastic. They're slightly different as well. Frimpong offers more in terms of pace and attacking sort of sense. Conor Bradley is more of an all rounder, but does like to cut inside as well. So you can offer that underlap option, whereas Frimpong's probably more of a overlapping player. But even having said that, I've seen clips of Frimpong, doing diagonal runs from the right hand side and finding himself in the central part of the box and taking shots as well. So look, for me, he will be a fantastic signing for us. That's the prediction I'm going for. I feel like he fits us to the T. We couldn't find a like for like replacement for Trent Alexander-Arnold. It's virtually impossible. There isn't anyone out there in world football that can pass that Trent or that can play like Trent. And look, let's be honest, he's moved on and he's going over to Real Madrid. Why don't we do the same? Let's move on and try and find a different type of right back, someone that could actually end up being a unicorn right back in their own way. And Frimpong, for me, could be that guy. That's why I've titled the show, saying Frimpong is the guy because I do believe he is the guy. So let's see what happens. I've spoken a lot about him. Hopefully, this move doesn't fall apart, and we do actually get it concluded. Um, but I'm excited. This is the transfer that excites me a lot. I feel like he's such a talented player, and I think he will fit Liverpool very, very well. So, one to watch. Let's hope, we hear some good news in the coming weeks. A lot of, reliable journalists like your Fabrizio Romanos and your Onsteins, they're all suggesting that he's the guy. And he's also said some good things about Liverpool over the past as well. So for me, I think he would be a fantastic signing. If you agree or disagree, feel free to drop a comment and let me know what you guys think. Before we close the show, I can see we've got a couple of comments, to just put them up. Dad says, Yo, Ozzy, hope you're well today. Big up yourself, Dad. I'm doing well. I hope you are okay as well. Thanks for your comment. Thanks for tuning in as well. We've got Ibrahim Hassan. Big up yourself, Ibrahim. He says, What do you think about Van der Sar from Monaco? I actually quite like Van der Sar. I did an episode which was for part of my series called Liverpool Squad Talk. So make sure you check that out on my channel. I did a Defenders edition and I covered right back quite heavily. And there was a few players that really stood out for me. So for me, I like the look of Guevara Reed from Feyenoord. I also liked Van der Sar and Pedro Porro. So those are the ones that really stood out for me. And also Livramento, I quite like him as well. Frimpong, I kind of cheated, just to give you a bit of a spoiler. I placed him more in the attacking um, segment because he plays more as a right winger for Leverkusen. So that's why I said that he would be a great signing for us for right wing, but can also cover right back, which is the same kind of scenario. Just say it how you want. You can flip it. End of the day, he covers right back and right wing. In terms of Van der Sar, if for some reason this Frimpong deal didn't happen, I think Van der Sar is a fantastic option. And from what I've heard, he's actually available for a good fee. I think around £25 million. So we could get both. Could you imagine that we were signing both? I think that'd be a bit unfair on Conor Bradley because I do believe he deserves a chance to play more first team football. Um, if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably edge it with Frimpong, just because I've seen him a bit more, and I feel like with the Dutch connection as well, I think he will suit the way we play. So I like Van der Sar. He would be my second choice in this scenario. I do like Pedro Porro as well, but I think Daniel Levy is going to take the mick out of us and rob us for days. So he's not going to part ways or let the player leave on good terms. It's probably going to be an inflated price, which we've got to be careful in terms of how we spend our money this summer. So for me, Pedro Porro is probably not a realistic one, but it's probably between Frimpong and Van der Sar. For me, I'd go with Frimpong. That would be my choice. Abdul, big up Abdul, he says, Hi Ozzy, how are you? Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Liverpool versus Arsenal tomorrow. We need a right back, left back, centre back, CDM, and number 9. FSG out. Free Palestine, free Imran Khan, free Pakistan. You never walk on. Big up yourself. As always, Abdul. In terms of the positions, that's interesting list there because I will do a show where I kind of become Mystic Oz and try to predict transfers coming in and also transfers going out. So we'll do a show in that sort of way, and then you'll see the profile players that I feel like we should sign, and also players that should leave the club, and then also touch on the financial element where we see how much money we can generate from sales, and then how much that money can go into buying new players and try and balance that in that way. So I'll do a show like that, probably after the season ends, and then we'll talk about certain players in more detail. But in terms of the positions there, I think that's probably right. I'd probably add one more to that list. I'd probably add a number 10 that can play right wing. So in my head, that's Turkey. I think add Turkey to that list of positions you mentioned there, and then I think we've got a complete squad. If players depart unexpectedly, question marks over Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota, they will need to be replaced as well. So that's something I'll touch on the show, because I don't think it's quite obvious that they'll be leaving. I think Darwin Núñez, we can all agree that he is going to leave in due course. But the other two, it's interesting because one player for me looks like he's past his best, and that's Diogo Jota, unfortunately. So maybe it's time for us to sell the player because he's been quite injury prone over the years, and the saying, uh, the best ability is availability. So if he's not offering that to us, then it doesn't favour Liverpool in any shape or form. So Jota for me, if we get interest from Saudi, they will be willing to pay a good chunk of money. And speaking of Saudi, they're very interested in signing Luis Diaz. So Luis Diaz, on his sort of current contract, he's not happy with the terms. He wants improved terms. So it might be where Liverpool might not give him those terms, and he may decide to request to leave the club this summer. So that'll be interesting in terms of if he left, because you have a player in house who's good enough to play, then that's Chiesa, but I don't think Chiesa is favoured by the manager, and I think Chiesa could leave this window as well. So I think without Diaz or Jota leaving, for me, I'd want us to sign six players, and the reason why I've said the six player in terms of an attacking mid, because I don't see Javier having a future. Not that I want him to leave. I think he's a talented player. I don't think Arne Slot favours him, so it could be where this is the right time to sell him on. We'd get a good amount of money for him, and we can use that transfer fee onto Turkey and maybe elsewhere as well. So yeah, big yourself, Abdul. I'll definitely be doing a show covering those areas that you mentioned, because that is definitely the areas that we need to improve more. In terms of the right back, I'm hoping Frimpong is that guy. Ado also comments and says, we require a robust defense, good on the ball, passing, crossing, football knowledge, high IQ, and a proactive counter-offensive strategy. Right back, should go academy, inexperienced. I wouldn't go academy, to be fair. I like the look of Guevara Reed from Feyenoord, but he would be a risk at this age. He's only 18 years of age. Um, looks very, very talented, but he's still growing as a kid. He's still in his developmental sort of stages of his career. I know he's playing Champions League football for his club, but it's something where it's a huge move to leave Feyenoord for Liverpool at 18 years of age, and if you're coming in to be a first teamer as well, it's a lot of pressure. And let's say we do sign him, and it's him and Conor Bradley. You got two young defenders, and Conor Bradley with his injury record, that puts a lot more pressure on a player like Guevara Reed. So Frimpong for me is the right profile. He's the right age. He's ready and raring to go, and I feel like he excels in a lot of areas that makes him a very unique player. The way I've seen him gliding past players effortlessly, 2, 3 players as well, and he's got a decent cross on him as well. So for me, he's got a lot in his locker, and I feel like he can improve under Arne Slot. So I'm excited about Frimpong being that guy, to be fair. Ibrahim's saying, Ozzy, what player would you choose On striker, CDM, and left wing if Diaz leaves. Good question, Ibrahim. The striker one's such a crazy market because I'll say a name and it might not feel realistic, right? So I'll give you a few options. So for me, the one that I really like is Isak, and that's not a surprise. I'm sure a lot of us like Isak. I feel like the way we are currently playing, the way we're currently set up, I think he's almost perfect for that role. But then you've got another striker in Julian Alvarez who can do the same kind of role where he's probably a bit more suited to Arne Slot because in my eyes, he's a 9.5 where he's a number 9 in terms of being a prolific striker, but he can also be a creative player as well. He can drop play number 10 if required. He can play on the flanks. But if it was my choice, I'd go for Isak there. Don't know. It will depend on how Newcastle end their season. If they finish in the Champions League spot, then very unlikely. I think he'll stay put there. Julian Alvarez seems a bit unrealistic as well, despite the noise this week. Suggests that we could be going in for him. I'm not quite so sure. Um, if we do get either of those players, happy days. You'll probably see me doing an impromptu show. Probably have a shisha in the background to celebrate. That's how I do it. So, um, yeah, those two would be the dream signings. Apart from those two, I'd probably go for Ekitike from Frankfurt, but not the price that they want. They want around 80 million pounds. For me, I think a deal of like 50 million is the right amount, the right valuation. I think higher than that is, yeah, we're overpaying in my opinion because he's not the finished article and he will take some time to get used to the way we play, get used to the Premier League. I really don't want that type of striker to fit. I don't want a project striker anymore. We had Darwin Nunez, who was kind of that guy, coming into the league and looked quite raw, but people thought there was a talented player there. And for me, he's just not progressed any bit. So he's probably stagnated since he's joined the club. And that's a concern when you're number 9 playing for Liverpool. If you're not doing the simple things like controlling the ball properly or dribbling past players or making the right pass to the right decision in the final third, and most importantly, his finishing has always been erratic. That's not the type of striker I want. And that's what concerns me with the market because Ekitika, I think, is still quite raw, but I feel like, under Arne Slot's coaching, he can be refined and he could be the perfect striker for Liverpool. We've been linked with Benjamin Sesko as well. For me, he's raw. He's like another Nunes. So for me, that's a no-go. And I really hope we don't sign him because for me, that would be a very underwhelming addition to the squad. And you've got the likes of Jonathan Davids, who's a free transfer. You've got Delap, who I do like, but Delap for me has to be a backup. If we were to sell Jota, for example, I sign Delap to replace him. So we've got a player on the bench that can come off the bench and be impactful in that manner. So that would be the profile. Or Jonathan David, free transfer. You're not spending any money on him. He's experienced and can do a different job for us in the team where he can drop deep and then can be a good link-up player from midfield to attack and can score goals. He's a finisher. He's not, easy on the eye. He's not going to score exquisite goals. But Jonathan David, in terms of what he brings to the table, he's a finisher. So, he could be a useful addition to the squad. But I'm thinking a bit too ahead there. But in terms of the striker, for me, he'd be Isak. But I don't know. I don't think that's realistic, unfortunately. CDM, it's an interesting one. There's quite a few names out there. I quite like the look of Lamine Kamara. He plays for Monaco, so if you haven't seen him play, do check out some compilations. He's very energetic, box to box, but can play in that double pivot role. So kind of similar trait of Gravenberch. But the player that I've been linked with quite recently is Wharton from Crystal Palace. I do like the look of him. I just don't know if it's realistic. I feel like we're gonna have to break the bank to sign him. And Angelo Stiller. Angelo Stiller, I have a feeling that we're gonna get him. That's my gut feeling. Um, from what I've seen, I like him. He's a good player. He just doesn't move me, if that makes sense. There's certain players when you watch them, you're like, oh, do you know what? He's the guy. Liverpool needs to target him him 100%. Kind of like how I feel about Frimpong. Stiller, I think it's more of a calculated decision that he ticks a lot of boxes. He'll be a good addition to the team. He's not like a groundbreaking. Like if we were to sign someone like Camavinga, that's a groundbreaking one in my eyes. But I think Stiller could be the one that ends up joining Liverpool, and I think he'd be a great addition. Left-footed player, great passing range, pretty much a dictator in the middle of the park, not a complete destroyer, but has good ability on the ball in terms of interceptions and um, tackling as well. So he's definitely a player that could do a job for us. Walton would be good because he's homegrown as well, and he shouldn't take time to, you know, get embedded to the team. But I think he'd cost a bit. So they're actually quite similar in terms of profile, in terms of being both left-footed, and that would be a different sort of profile of a player having a left-footed midfielder in our team. So the CDM, I'm edging towards Stiller. I just have a feeling that we'll get him. I think he would fit the way we want to play. We don't want a complete destroyer. We want a player that sets the tempo but can do the dirty work as well. So maybe like another Zubimendi. That's what people have likened Stiller to. So maybe Stiller and left wing if Diaz leaves. I think a lot of fans will say the likes of Rodrigo. I don't think Rodrigo's realistic. I think it might be worth signing a player that is up and coming, but still has played a good amount of football in the professional game. The dream signing for me personally would be Barcola. I really like Barcola. I was quite disappointed that we didn't sign him a couple of years ago because we were very strongly linked with the player when he was at Lyon. But if that's not attainable, which is very likely, I do like the look of Malik Fofana from Lyon. So him and Cherky can come on board because I feel like he'd be a good addition to the squad. He'll offer something different on that left wing. So yeah, so maybe Malik Fofana. So I don't feel like we need to sign a player. I think if we're going to upgrade on Cody Gakpo, you're gonna have to spend big bucks. And Diaz is an interesting one. If we do sell him, how much money are we gonna get for him? Because if he goes to Barca, he could. I don't know how much we'd get from Barca because they're not financially great right now, as in they've got they've got money through coming through to the club. But in terms of officially on the books, are they able to sign a player like Luis Diaz? That remains to be seen. Saudi could probably offer us about 70 million. So we could go on and sign someone like Rodrigo, I guess. But I don't think Rodrigo would leave. I just don't get that feeling that he wants to leave the club. I could be completely wrong because they've still got Vinicius, Mbappe, and players that are occupying his position. In fact, he's actually playing on the wrong side. He's actually predominantly a left winger, but does tend to occupy that right hand side a bit more. So left winger, I'd probably go for a younger profile. I know we've been linked with Nico Williams. Not for me. I think he's too inconsistent. Gittins as well looks a good player, but I think he'd cost a bit. So if his transfer fee was a bit more realistic, maybe he'd be an option for us. So I do like Gittins. I think he'd be a good one. Gittins or Malik Fofana, someone of that ilk, someone that's not going to command a starting position, but they're going to work their way through and challenge Gakpo on that left wing. And if Gakpo is not available, those two players will be good enough, in my opinion, to play a decent run of games and help the team going forward. So that'll be my profile, but I'm sure we'll talk about these positions a lot more during the course of the off season. And yes, if there's any strong links with certain players, I'll definitely be doing more dedicated shows in the upcoming weeks. Uh, Abdul has said we need our forwards to contribute with goals. Diaz, Gakpo, Chiesa, Jota, Nunes. We need chopper chain transfer this summer and be ruthless. Yeah, we do. I think in terms of the names you mentioned, Nunes definitely going to leave. Jota, 50-50, in my opinion. Chiesa, I feel like he's gone. I personally would keep him for another season because I do feel like there's a player there, but the manager doesn't have faith in him, and maybe he's just not suited for the Premier League, and that happens. That happens to good players. So maybe he goes back to Italy. Gakpo, he of course he remains he's our left winger in the team, and Diaz 50-50, depends on his situation. Um, if he doesn't make a big fuss about his contract and is happy to play, I don't think we'll sell him. If we get a crazy offer from Saudi, then I think we definitely consider it, and he'd definitely consider it as well. So it depends in terms of what events unfold this summer. I don't think we would force him to leave the club. It would be based on he doesn't want to sign a contract, or we get a crazy offer from Saudi, for example. So that would be the reason why they leave. In terms of what you're suggesting, how the forwards need to contribute. Yeah, they certainly do. We've won the league without a prolific striker in my eyes. Yes, Salah's got all of the goals, or most of the goals, I should say. Gakpo and Diaz have also contributed, but we've not had a number nine that's been prolific, in my opinion. So that's definitely area where we need to contribute. And with Frimpong, I feel like he can contribute. Um, with the goals and assists as well. If we sign a number 10, Turkey and Szoboszlai will still be in the team in some shape or form. So he should find himself to be a bit more well equipped for this position that he's playing, and should be more instinctive when he's in good goal scoring position, because I feel like he overplays it or passes to Salah too often, needs to be a bit more selfish and try and take shots on goal. So for me, you're right. We do need to be ruthless. um, we've been very consistent this year, but we haven't smashed teams. I want us to do that a bit more to really show our dominance, and hopefully, Liverpool can make, in my opinion, six additions that can really solidify our squad. Then then we're talking, and then I'm not gonna say we're going for the quad, but we're going to challenge, like really, really challenge next year. So only time will tell in terms of who we appoint this summer. I've just said finding skilled strikers and forwards is challenging right now, and investing in them carries inherent risks if they fail to meet expectations at Liverpool and standard Premier League football. I think that comes with all transfers, to be fair. But in terms of striking department, you may be right, because it's not saying much, to be honest with you. There's players that everyone knows is, they are playing to the highest level, but it will take a lot of money to get them out of their current situations as well. So it is challenging, because I feel like the way Liverpool set up right now, we need a ready-made striker. I don't want a project striker. We've had that in Darwin Núñez, and he's taken us back, in my opinion. Like we've not progressed, because our number nine should be banging in the goals left, right, and center, and he's not delivered at all. So for me, that's why I've said Isak and Julian Alvarez. For me, I wouldn't mind either. I'd go for Isak personally, because I feel like he brings that physical presence as well as the other good stuff that he does in terms of finishing, holding up the ball, attacking the channels. So he's pretty much got everything to his locker. Alvarez can do the same as well, but I would personally like to see Isak in our team, because I feel like he's a proper gunman. And those are like level one, and then you've got level two. You've got Osimhen, who I do like, but I don't know if the club would pursue the striker, because he's got quite big wages, I think. But in terms of what he brings to the table, he'd be a good option for us. £60 million is his release clause, so he's prolific. He's proven. He's been doing it for a number of years. He's experienced now. He's pretty much hitting his prime year. So for me, Osimhen would be a good option as well. You got Gyökeres. I've got question marks. I don't know if he will produce the same form that he's been doing in Portugal into the Premier League. So that's the question mark there. But in terms of ability, he does have, great, goal scoring ability in front of goal. And then you've got your project players, you've got your Ekitikes, you've got your Seskos, those type of players, the laps. So it's not a very blessed market. And I think some fans will have concerns about Isak's injury records. And I understand it, but in the last couple of years, he's not suffered as much injuries as it's been painted out to be. So that's why, for me, if we were to get Isak, having Isak and Jota doesn't bode too much confidence, especially Jota more so, because when you have a backup, you want your backup to be more available, if that makes sense. I know that sounds silly out loud. Like if your first team striker is not available, the backup should always be available. Like he shouldn't be injured. So everyone picks up injuries here and there. I get it, but he's not actively playing a lot of games, so he should be ready to play when called upon. That's how I see it. So a bit of an old school way of looking at it. But with Jota, if he's injured and then Isak picks up a small niggle where he's out for 2 weeks, then we've got to put Diaz. We've got to find a makeshift striker. That shouldn't be the case, in my opinion. So yeah, it's going to be interesting what we do in the summer. Yeah, let's see how the season concludes because I think that will have an impact in terms of what profile of strikers we go for. So let's see how it goes. Abdul says our aim and objective for next season is to contend for both the Premier League and Champions League. To achieve this, we must acquire key players, transfers, and sell players. I don't think we need to sell too many. I think there are a few players that will part way, most definitely. But for me, it's adding quality to the squad. We need to add better players to beefing up certain areas like midfield. I feel like we definitely need to get another midfielder. Centre back position, find Van Dijk's long term successor. The number 10 slash right winger, that could be Mohamed Salah's long term successor. So future proof the club as well by signing players that are playing at a great level, but under a couple of years' time, they're ready made to replace Van Dijk and Salah if they decide to leave and not extend their contract 2 years' time. So we have to think that far ahead, in my opinion. And left backs an area we've definitely need to upgrade on. So maybe a Kirkers would definitely fit that bill. Frimpong replacing Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back. So yeah, those are the core areas I feel like we need to adjust. Of course, if there's any departures, then you replace them, you know, like for like. But generally speaking, it's probably three in defense, a midfielder, an attacking midfielder, and a striker. So that's six positions there for me. So that's the number of players I want us to sign. Ozan Kabak says, is it true that Frimpong is worse defensively than Trent? I'd probably say they're on the same level, if in my opinion, only because I haven't seen Frimpong play right back in the last few years because he's not played that role for Celtic. He started playing there as a right back, but then he evolved into more of a wing back slash winger at Celtic, and then when he moved over to Leverkusen, especially under Alonso, he's been made into a right wing back, and then for the Netherlands, he played as a winger. So he's not played a huge amount of games as a traditional right back, but I think our right back in our team doesn't play the traditional way. Trent has not played the traditional way. He's played the inverted role. He's had a bit more free role in the team. Frimpong might not have the free role in terms of finding areas or space in central areas, but he'll be given that free role to bomb down that right hand side. So he's going to give us a different option. He's going to give us different artillery on that right hand side, and that completely changed our team. And even when Frimpong's not available, Conor Bradley can say kind of same offer that same sort of style of play on that right hand side. So even though they're not identical, but they do have similar traits in my opinion. So that's how we're going to set up going forward next year. It's not going to be a creative right back who's going to produce Beckham type passes every 2 minutes. It's going to be a rapid, flamboyant fullback charging down that right hand side, and you have the likes of Salah drifting in, finding himself in goal scoring positions, and you've got your right back crossing in the ball and then obviously scoring the goals there. So he's going to give us a different type of artillery, but with this whole defensive thing, I feel like we need to stop focusing on that too much. He can defend. Don't get me wrong. He's not an elite defender. He's not a defensive fullback. He's an attacking fullback, and that's the profile that Liverpool are going for this season. So for me, if that's what Arne Slot wants, he's got an idea. He's got a philosophy, and I feel like we're going to see that a lot more next season. So to answer that question, I think they're probably on a level par. Um, but they're going to be Frimpong, if he just joined Liverpool, he's going to be given the license to bomb that right hand side and make it his zone. He's going to control that right hand side. So it's still exciting going forward, in my opinion. Ozzy, tell us your dream starting 11 for next season. All right, let's do this. So, Alisson in goal, left back Perkez, right back Frimpong, and then Van Dijk and Konate as my centre back pairing, but Huijsen from Bournemouth being the third choice. Midfield, I'd still go for Gravenberg and McAllister, but then I would have Stiller and Endo. I think Endo will stay at the club, and also Jones, and I think Basic might return as well. So that'll be my midfield options, and then you've got Gakpo. I think Diaz will stay, in my opinion. He's got 2 years left on his contract, so if he wants to stay for another year, I think he'll stay, and then maybe we'll cash in on him next summer in 2026. So let's just say he stays. So we Gakpo and Diaz, and then Salah. If we were to sign Cherky, would he start? I'd go for Cherky. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Sabozla as well, so I don't want to contradict myself. And then this, let's say Cherky, because he'll be a joy to watch. And up top, Isak. So that would be my dream lineup. Very attack minded, as you can tell, but I think I've even mentioned some squad players that I feel like we'll have a good balance in the team. So yeah, that's my dream team there. Um, Aussie do a team of the season for the Premier League and Champions League. I'll definitely be doing one for the Premier League. So once the season concludes, I will be doing a team of the season, and I'll also be doing a player ratings for Liverpool players as well. So make sure to look out for that in the coming weeks. Um, Abdul said a comprehensive analysis, appraisal, and breakdown review of our defense midfield. Yeah, areas is required this summer. Yeah, I will be doing that after the season ends. And I'll add a financial context as well in terms of, I'm not just going to say names for the sake of it. I'm going to try and be an accountant and then balance it out for you guys as well. So yeah, that show will be coming up very soon. Um, Abdul says Kelleher, Gomez, Simicast, Kwanzaa, Endo, Elliott, and Morton to be sold. Is there anyone else that I'd add to that? So I disagree with Gomez. I don't think Gomez will leave this summer. I think we'll have him in the squad as a utility player. I know he's picked up injuries, but he's kind of that safety blanket where, if players are injured and, we need someone to come in and step up to the plate, it would be Joe Gomez. So I think maybe one more year for Joe Gomez and then we might sell him next summer. Yeah. Kwanzaa, I'm 50-50 on because I feel like there's a player there, but then I don't think we'll sell Joe Gomez and Kwanzaa. It will be one or the other. Gomez is the experienced player, so I would keep Gomez because then if you sign someone like Huijsen, for example, on paper the backup will be Huijsen and Gomez, and that's a good balance for a centre back pairing there. Kwanzaa, I wouldn't sell him. If I'm being honest, if we decide to, you know, if we decide we don't want to stick with Kwanzaa in this next season squad, a loan move would make sense because he can go to another club, play some first team football, and then return next year more experienced and more ready made to challenge for a centre back position. So I wouldn't sell Kwanzaa. I'm still 50-50 on Kwanzaa. So I think when the season ends, then I'll probably have a stronger opinion. Um, and if I was to sell him, I'll be brutally honest, guys. The only reason I would sell him is because we need to generate funds to sign certain players. And I don't want that to be the case with Kwanzaa because I do feel like there's a talented player there. He's just been a bit unlucky. Even the game the other day, where he scored an own goal and then he conceded a penalty. That was two errors, but during the game, it was actually quite decent. So, unfortunately, when you're a young centre back, those are the things that I remembered. So, yeah, that's a bit unlucky there for him. Um, I wouldn't want to sell Endo. I feel like he's won Arne Slot over, so I feel like he'd be a good player to have in the midfield. Um, as long as he's happy to be a backup, which I think he will be, to be fair. Um, and I feel like you need players like Endo who, they're positive individuals in the squad. They're not too serious. They're not going to command a starting place every week. They're not going to knock on Arne Slot's door, anything like that. They know what they bring to the table, and when called upon, they're professional. They give everything on the pitch, and you need warriors like that in our team. So I would definitely keep Endo. I wouldn't sell him. Elliot, I think it will be time to probably sell him on just because he's not had much game time. I don't feel like Arsenal favors the player anymore. Morton will definitely leave. I'll probably add Ben Doak to that list and Darwin Nunes as well. So I think those players will help us generate some funds. Hopefully, we can sign some good players in the summer window. Ozan Kabak says so. It's like an early version of Trent, like during. Yeah, I think that might be the way where with Trent, you've got. So obviously, when he was when he came in, he was a lot younger, so he was a bit more quicker. But that's the kind of player I see. I think in terms of pace, Frimpong is electric in comparison to Trent, even in his early days. But that is the style of play that I'm envisioning to be next season. So yeah, that's how I'm seeing it as well. Abdul says, "Oh, so this is the full list. Let's see what we've got here." Kelleher, agreed. I think he's definitely going. Joe Gomez, no, not for me. Simicast, yes. Kwanzaa, on the fence on that one, 50-50. Endo, no. Elliot, yes. Morton, yes. Diaz, 50-50. Nunez, 100% yes. Chiesa, reluctantly, yes. I would like to see him stay, but I think he'll go. Bendok, yes. Bashis, I have a feeling we might bring him back. So I think he would be one of our midfield options next time. So I say no. I think he comes back to the team. Ramsey, oh bloody, I forgot about Ramsey. Sell. I don't think he has a future at the club anymore due to his injuries over the years. Phillips, oh, he needs to go. Reese Williams, he needs to go. And Dan's loan. I wouldn't sell him. I think a loan move to a championship team would be a good one for him. So that's what I would go for. And that's the last comment. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Daz, Ibrahim, Abdul, and Ozan Kabak for your comments. Appreciate your engagement as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now, in terms of upcoming content, I will be doing a live watch along tomorrow of the game between Liverpool versus Arsenal. Of course, we'll be getting that guard of honor, and I really hope Arsenal goes for a strong team because I would like to add more misery to Arsenal's week than it is right now. So that would be a nice way to end the week. And I'll also be doing a match reaction show later in the evening. So make sure to tune in for that tomorrow. And Ozan Kabak says, can't wait for the trophy lift against Palace. Yeah, me neither. I'm counting down the days. I I'm making plans to come to the parade. So if anyone's there, feel to reach out to me. Follow me on social media at Aussie .ftp on Instagram. You can also follow me at Aussie_FTP. So if I'm there, feel free to reach out if you want to have a little chat. We can do that. But yeah, it's going to be. I think they've already estimating that there's going to be 1 million people there in the parade. So yeah, it's going to be a long time coming for us Liverpool fans because we won the league title 5 years ago, but we weren't physically allowed to be present there. It wasn't paraded on the streets. So it was nice because it was the one that broke the curse that we hadn't won it for 30 years, and it will definitely hold with high regards in my heart. But I feel like this one is going to be special. Just to that was the comeback said to watch the trophy lift with fans going crazy in the background, the noise. I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, it should be an interesting one. Just got a comment here from Ibrahim. Do you think Trent will be on the bus, Ozzy? He'll be on the bus, but he'll be on the lower deck. I don't think he'll be visibly at the top, honestly, because the parade shouldn't be about Trent. Yes, he's been a part of the squad in terms of helping us win the league title. So he can be part of the celebrations, but I don't want him to be at the top. I don't want him to be all glitz and glamour. Like you've selected Spain for that now, so that's when you move over to Spain, that's your glitz and glamour there. For this time, just sit at the bottom deck. Don't be involved in the celebrations because the fans, in my opinion, drop a comment and let me know if you disagree. I don't think they're going to be receptive to Trent. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens when he does step onto the pitch, if he does even, because My opinion is that I would not involve him at all now, not even on the bench. For me, he should not be selected ever because he's made his decision. He's announced it, which for me was poor timing. If he had just waited for that decision to be announced after the parade, makes perfect sense to me. I can't lie. Don't get me wrong, we'd still be annoyed and frustrated about it, but I feel like him making that announcement the other day was just selfish. He just wanted to get off his chest. But these things you have to time it probably because now it looks like you didn't really care about the fans. I know we've won the league title, but that doesn't mean you just go and announce and say, "Oh yeah, I'm leaving." Like we haven't finished our fixtures. We've got a parade coming up. You think you're gonna get good reception? I think he's deluded if he thinks everyone's gonna give him a round of applause. Everyone's entitled to, feel how they feel. But I'm still annoyed about the way he's conducted himself. He's done it in a poor manner, and I definitely believe he's tarnished his legacy. So, with regards to him being on the bus, you can stay on the lower deck. Just don't come upstairs. I don't want to see you upstairs. I don't want to see you holding the trophy in front of the crowds. But that's my opinion there. Ozan come back says that's going to be mad awkward, Yeah, it is. It is. But it's got to be done. I don't want him there. I don't want him there at all. Imagine being part of the celebration but getting booed at the same time. Look, it's a possibility. It honestly is. And I think look, I'm not trying to sound dramatic, but for his safety, it might not be wise for him to be on the top deck. Can you imagine fans up trying to throw bottles at him? You can't rule it out. We are emotional fans. As a Liverpool fan base, we are emotional. So if I'm seen holding the Premier League trophy, but you decide to duck out and go to Real Madrid, you're a sellout. I don't want you parading the trophy like that. Grinning teeth holding a trophy. I don't want to see that. So that's my opinion. But for his safety, just sit on the lower deck. You can be part of the team celebration. It's gonna end up being a leaving do for you, isn't it? Really. So after that, please just bounce. That's how I see it. Madrid probably don't want him to be selected as well. Yeah, I'm not even doing it for their benefit. I'm probably maybe it's ego talking. I don't know, but you've made a decision. All I care about is my team, and I want it to be where all the players are involved that are going to be part of our team next season to be selected. So the squad players that haven't had much game time, get them involved, and try and end the season on a high. But the guy's not part of our long term future, so doesn't need to be part of it. He can just watch us in the stands. And I know he said in his announcement video that he plans to come to Liverpool to Anfield to watch the team. As a fan, you're not welcome. So, um, you can watch it now for the last 2 3 games. Watch that in the stands. But after that, please don't come. So that's how I see it. I was gonna come back. So Emmanuel start giving 10 minutes against Paris, then he gets injured. You know what? That'd be mad. I'd laugh, but look, I'm not. I don't wanna sound like I'm, petty or anything like that. I just don't like the way he's conducted. He's really tarnished his legacy. Um, some people are still asking that question: Is he a Liverpool legend? For me, it's too easy to say that. I can't answer that question right now. Maybe ask me that in 5 10 years time if I'm still doing content because yeah, I can't answer that question. I think when you review when it's all settled down and then he's towards the latter stage of his career, then we can kind of assess it. But right now it's too fresh, and I'm I know a lot of fans are angry. I'm not quite angry. I'm just disappointed in terms of how he's conducted himself. And some people say, well, look, he left. He hasn't left us in a transfer. I actually think players don't care about that sort of stuff. I think they're so selfish in their own world that they don't care about the business element. They don't care about leaving the club so they get money. People use Jack Grealish as an example, but he had the release clause, so that wasn't him saying to Aston Villa like, "Oh, I'm leaving. Here's 100 mil." Aston Villa never thought that anyone would match the release clause. At that time, it felt like a pretty much unrealistic amount of money to pay for Grealish. So as soon as Man City made that bid, they were jumping for joy, as you can. I would as well. Kind of like how we felt with Coutinho when he went for 146 mil. Take me to the bank right now. That's crazy money. So there's money where you just can't reject, and I feel like in those situations you couldn't. But Trent, There's all sorts of stories suggesting that he had this move sort of premeditated a couple of years ago, and I kind of see it because that is how Madrid operate. They analyze who to target and reach out to them privately, which is unethical. But that's how they operate. And they'll tell the player, like, look, we're interested in you, but you have to complete your contract at your current club, and then we'll sign you a free transfer. But if you sign a new contract, then we're not going to target you again. So it's blackmail in that sense to make sure that the player commits. But yeah, there's too much negative than positives into the how this move to leave Liverpool and go to Real Madrid has evolved. So that's how I feel inside. I don't feel positive right now. People are like, oh, he deserves a round of applause for all of his services. That's because you've got rival fans who are talking rubbish, and they're not thinking from an emotional point of view. They're looking at it as that, oh, you know what, you guys should be lucky because he came through your ranks and you didn't lose out on money as such, but he gave you great years. Remember, these rival fans would tell us he's like a terrible right back. Now that he's leaving, they're like, oh, do you know what? He's generational. Like, he's one of the best right backs in Premier League history. This is what I'm saying. Don't ever believe what real rival fans have to say because they just talk nonsense and it always has to fit their narrative. So they're pleased, they're overjoyed that Trent is leaving. But I'm hope this guy on my screen right now, Frimpong, comes in and yeah, does a madness next season at Liverpool. That's what I'm envisioning right now. So hopefully that happens. Um, Ibrahim says, and I don't think we call him legend like Joe. For me, I can't say it out loud. I can't say it. Not because I'm not because I have a different opinions, but I don't want to say it on screen. It's too fresh for me to even think about him being labeled as a legend. Yeah, it's too fresh. So yeah, I think we'll have to wait. And Ozan Kabak agrees. He says, I agree. In 10 years, let's see how I feel. Yeah, I feel the same. Let talk to me in 10 years. If I'm still doing content, we'll talk then because yeah, I don't know. I don't know. If we're winning lots of titles, then it might be different. Then Frimpong might be the guy. Let me just put that in the atmosphere. Like he becomes the unicorn defender, the unbelievable one that everyone wants to sign. But only time will tell in terms of what happens with Liverpool. But regarding Trent, we have to move on, and it looks like we have identified our new right back. And according to reports, it seems to be Jeremie Frimpong. And me, I'm personally very pleased and excited about this signing. So please, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. If you agree, disagree, love to hear your thoughts. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Um, I was gonna come out and say Frimpong, free print titles. Yeah, you love it. I love that for happening. But yeah, only time will tell. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.